Breaking tonight, new fallout after President-elect Trump calls a meeting with 24 names from television news to discuss what he calls the dishonest media. Good evening and welcome to the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. Just hours ago, the president-elect sidestepping the press pool covering him and posting a video on YouTube discussing his plans for his first day in office. The rare move coming after a strictly off-the-record meeting at Trump Tower with some of the biggest names in media. Mr. Trump's issues with the press during the campaign are well known, and there are reports of some heated moments in that boardroom today, but in large part, the talk was apparently serious and productive. Just ahead, we'll be joined by Kellyanne Conway, senior advisor to the president-elect's transition team, who was in that room when the meeting took place. We'll speak to Ms. Conway in a moment, but first, Trace Gallagher with the details on what happened inside of Trump Tower today. Trace?
You know, Megyn, the media was simultaneously accused of lifting Trump up, tearing him down, and in the end, putting his odds of winning at close to zero. Donald Trump responded by using the media as a punching bag, firing up crowds at his rallies by slamming networks and newspapers and taunting certain journalists. But today, a 75-minute meeting with the top network brass was described by Team Trump as excellent and unprecedented. Watch.
There's no need to mend fences. It was an off-the-record meeting. It was very cordial, very productive, genial, but it was also very candid and very honest. I mean, from my own perspective, it's great to hit the reset button. It was a long, hard-fought campaign. Donald Trump proved that he animated America, he understood America, and now he will be president to all Americans.
And when she says off the record, it means the substance of the conversation is off limits, though sources tell Politico there was some airing of grievances and that at times the conversations got a bit heated, but remained civil throughout. And Donald Trump told the networks he was simply looking for fairness. Apparently, there was also progress made with regards to media access to Trump and his growing administration, including the importance of a press pool, you know, those who can follow the president-elect's every step. Some networks sent journalists. All the networks sent top executives, including Fox News co-presidents Bill Shine and Jack Abernathy. Former Breitbart News CEO and current chief Trump advisor Steve Bannon also reportedly sat in for part of the meeting. And tomorrow, the New York Times has both off and on the record meetings with Trump, who now commonly refers to his hometown newspaper as the failed New York Times. But we should note in recent months, Trump has given the Times ample access. And finally, as for when Mr. Trump will hold his first news conference, we're told it'll be, quote, soon. Megyn.
Trace, good to see you. Joining us now with more, Kellyanne Conway, senior advisor to the presidential transition team. Kellyanne, great to see you.
Thank you, Megyn.
So what does that mean, fairness, right? Because I'll venture a guess, as we saw a lot of those executives going in. For the viewers, we saw a bunch of Fox News executives going in there. We saw Jeff Zucker, president of CNN, standing there, just in case you don't know those faces. So there was all the muckety-mucks from all of the media, cable, broadcast, you name it. What is fairness to Trump, to President-elect Trump?
Fairness is actually not having presumptive negativity written about you and always assuming the worst about you. And I think that Donald Trump has faced an unprecedented avalanche of critical coverage when he was running. And frankly, I think in part, he owes his victory to that. There was a backlash against the elites, a backlash against those who were telling Americans what is important to them. This statement, this transgression, this issue, whereas if you look at the Fox News polls, CNN, ABC, NBC, everybody was there. CBS polls, you see that Americans were very focused on jobs in the economy, healthcare, immigration, terrorism. I mean, the cues and clues of this election were right in front of us the whole time. Let me ask
you that. And by the way, the one that sticks out in my mind and has all along was the New York Times piece on Melania Trump. Melania Trump, the spouse, right? She's not a candidate, calling her a mannequin and a trophy wife, which if anybody had ever said that about Michelle Obama was a successful lawyer, but Melania Trump has been a successful businesswoman. She speaks several languages, a mannequin and a trophy wife. And it was just fine. They're allowed to say that about her.
It's as if the editors had off that week. And so that's just
so respect goes both ways, right?
It does.
But let me ask you about that, because even though the media did that to him, right, in his view, and obviously it's true in many cases that they went after him with abandon, the public did see through it. So has he learned anything from that? You know, can we expect him to have a thicker skin as president, given that he made it, notwithstanding that kind of coverage?
Well, he does have a thick skin, frankly. Somebody works very closely with him and was in that room today, directly aside him. I will say this, though. That's not what the meeting was about. The meeting is not about settling scores and avenging grievances and bringing up, different types of coverage. I think it's saying really that Donald Trump was the one person in that room who got it right, who understood American reflected back to them what their aspirations and their fears and their frustrations were. And now everybody has to work together. They're the fourth estate. They're incredibly powerful. Anchors like you are incredibly powerful in terms of distilling the information and reporting the news and maybe some opinion to the public, Megyn, in a fair-handed and complete way. And he will be the president of the United States, so we can have mutual.
He knows he's going to get hit, though. He's the president.
That's fine.
He's going to get hit. He's going to get hit often. He's not going to like it. That's the way it works,
That is the way it works, but it should be relevant to the job, and it should be relevant to the voters. And I have to tell you, as someone who was like a chief spokeswoman for him and his campaign manager, it wasn't always relevant to what Americans out there were telling us at rallies or telling pollsters behind the scenes concerned them. But I actually, having sat there, I thought it was very cordial, very genial. I thought it was.
So if we cover him the
productive.
same way, let's say the Kelly File, if we cover him the same way we cover Barack Obama, the same amount, the same skeptical eye, he's going to be fine with that.
Yes, but can you say that about everyone that's going to cover him? I mean, you had journalists saying during the campaign, Megyn, that Donald Trump compels them to suspend all objective standards of journalism.
Yes, correct.
They wrote about it.
We had some of those journalists on this program and pressed them.
I'm sure you did, and
on the inappropriateness of that.
That's right. It's completely inappropriate. It's not journalism. It's opinion.
That's right.
And it's sort of stop him at all costs.
That's right. If you want to take off your journalist outfit and declare yourself a pundit and go argue against him, go for it, but you can't wear both hats.
Right, and even the coverage over the last 2 weeks since he did win the election, it's been a combination of a few people wanting to cover his next 100 days, what he wants to do in office. He's been very clear about that 100-day plan. Your viewers can go pull it up on our website right now, his 100-day plan for them to see. But then you have others still fighting the last war. You have other people on TV, a lot of pundits on TV, frankly, everywhere, really just trying to deny him and delegitimize him.
Well,
and
the 5 stages of grief ends with acceptance, so they'll get there eventually. All right, I want a couple of other things I have to ask you about.
What was this big soundbite, though, at the time? It was, will Donald Trump and his supporters accept the election results? He won, and so many other people are saying hashtag.
I want to move on
from
the media. Secretary of State, now they're saying that's between Mitt Romney and Rudy Giuliani, which has a lot of our viewers saying, how could Mitt Romney even be in the running, given how loyal Rudy Giuliani was to Mr. Trump? And even if you may like Mitt Romney, he was not loyal, and in fact, he savaged Trump during the primary.
But the question is, are you loyal to the agenda that Mr. Trump, that President-elect Trump has put forward in terms of his view of the world and the prism through which the Secretary of State would function? But I think there's a longer short list for that particular position and others.
It's not just those two.
Not highly qualified men and women who have come to Bedminster, come to Trump Tower, people of different races and ethnicities, all political persuasions, people who have different backgrounds, public sector, private sector. Most of them will not be in the cabinet. Most of them are coming because they love the country and they want to share what their work on a particular issue or a particular success story has been.
Well, and it spoke well of both men that the meeting took place. What about you, Kellyanne? Have you been offered a cabinet post? No, it's not. You've been one of his most loyal advisors, his most successful, certainly the highest profile woman associated with his campaign. Has he offered you a position?
He has offered me a position very early on. In fact, the election night or the wee hours of Wednesday he did. And
is it a senior position?
It is, and I am I'm humbled by that. I think that it's everybody's dream to serve their nation at the highest level if they can, but I have 4 small children and I need to balance all types of personal and professional considerations, but I'm deciding where I'm best for this president-elect and this vice president-elect in due course. But there are many qualified men and women who can serve him at the highest levels. I do want to say, though, in terms of the people who were coming to see him, how thrilling it was to turn the corner and see people from entertainment, from the private sector, people of different races and ethnicities. The highest ranking woman in the Congress, Cathy McMorris Rodgers, who's given birth 3 times while she's been in Congress. That's pretty impressive. We had Representative Tulsi Gabbard from Hawaii there today, who's a Democrat.
How about Sarah Palin? Donald Trump had suggested she would be in his cabinet if he won. Is she going to be in?
I haven't seen her. I know that they're close and that she's been a great loyal friend and advisor to him throughout the campaign, but I haven't seen her as part of the cabinet mix, but that doesn't mean that she's not. Look, we're going to take the counsel of many different people, whether you have an official position or not, your opinion, your advice, this guy is a world-class listener and learner, and he's somebody I've seen behind the desk as a businessman, as a presidential candidate, and now president-elect. I see the same process where he assesses different consequences and possibilities, and he's in command and control, but he really does take counsel from many different people.
A question for you about Steve Bannon, senior advisor to Mr. Trump, who's from Breitbart originally. He's quoted as lamenting the fact that he predicts a Fox News that will be more centrist in the future, and came after our boss, Rupert Murdoch, in some unflattering terms. I question whether, does he have a problem with a centrist news organization, with centrist news anchors? I mean, why would he object to that?
I think his objection would be to biased and unfair, which is not the way he characterized Fox News to me anyway. But we're all looking for objective coverage, and the idea that some people think they're being objective in the mainstream media when they clearly have not been, when they allow people to refer to President-elect Trump in ways that are legally charged, that if you actually said that about him in a court of law, it would be you wouldn't be able to.
No, he has to be respected.
He has to be respected.
He's earned the respect of all
He has. Thank you. And Steve Bannon is a brilliant tactician. He was, I call him the general of our campaign. It's true.
And he too needs to be a unifier,
by the way,
doesn't he?
He had a receiving line today when the mainstream media were
Kellyanne,
leaving.
he too needs to be a unifier, doesn't he, as the senior advisor?
But he is. I mean, Megyn, we unified. We looked past and were impervious to the constant criticism and naysayers. Do you know what was said about all of us? We're stupid. You'll never work in this town again. How do you look your 4 children in the eye? You sold your soul.
Yeah.
It went on.
I've seen that happen to you directly.
It went on and on and on. And when you're focused on the task at hand and you believe in the man who's running for president and the man who's running for vice president, it steals you in a way.
Right, but then to the victor go the spoils. You rise up by lifting
That's right.
each other up. You win. And so isn't this the time to be magnanimous like Donald Trump is, and not to be, predicting or projecting onto the press how they must cover him? They're going to cover him how they see it, how they see fit.
We just want it to be objective
consistent
and fair.
with what they've learned. It's an ethical standard.
Yes, and Megyn, we want it to be a post-election coverage of the president-elect. That's the point here. The campaign is over. The people have spoken. And this man busted through a blue wall that nobody expected. He won states like Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania, which should have been Hillary Clinton's the whole time. And they were his because of the message, because of the way he's a master communicator.
Yep.
And a master connector, and
but we don't get paid to cheerlead for him.
No,
we get paid to cover him.
I don't expect anybody here to cheerlead for him. I expect us to have platforms like this where we can fairly and effectively and respectfully come in and state the case on his behalf.
Amen.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Thanks for having me.
Great to see you. Also tonight, the critics are zeroing in on Senator Jeff Sessions as the president-elect's pick for Attorney General. And up next, Sheriff David Clarke and Eric Guster take up both sides of this fierce fight. And then there has been 24 hours of backlash after this fashion model decided it would be appropriate to mock our next First Lady, Melania Trump, on a major network broadcast. Her accent, her intellect, apparently. And tonight, actor and comedian Tim Allen is with us as Hollywood and the White House appear headed for a showdown.
He's going to need a very thorough vetting. Many of those statements, they're old, but they're still troubling. And the idea that Jeff Sessions is just because he's a senator, he should get through without a series of very tough questions, particularly given those early things, no way.
That was Senate Minority Leader-elect Chuck Schumer making news by vowing to, quote, thoroughly vet Alabama Senator Jeff Sessions. The newly selected nominee for Attorney General is facing charges of racism as new controversy surfaces over comments he reportedly made 30 years ago. In just a moment, we'll have reaction from Sheriff David Clarke and Attorney Eric Guster. But first, we go to Trace Gallagher, who's in our West Coast newsroom with this one. Trace?
Megyn, Jeff Sessions has now been in the U.S. Senate for 20 years, but in 1986, as a Ronald Reagan nominee for federal judge, Sessions spent 21 hours in a Senate confirmation hearing that was replete with allegations of racism, including from a former black assistant U.S. attorney who testified that Sessions routinely called him boy. and joked that he supported the KKK before he found out they smoked marijuana. At the time, Sessions called the KKK allegation ludicrous and said using the term boy for a black man was reprehensible. But in the end, the Senate Judiciary Committee rejected him. And as you just heard, incoming Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says Jeff Sessions will be vetted again. To this day, Sessions calls the allegations heartbreaking, and his supporters say it should be noted that Jeff Sessions spearheaded the effort to award the Congressional Medal, the nation's highest civilian honor, to those who marched to Selma for civil rights 50 years ago. And listen to William Smith, who was hired by Jeff Sessions as the first African-American chief counsel on the Senate Judiciary Committee. Watch.
If you look at Jeff Sessions' history, he did prosecute the head of the KKK, made sure that he received the death penalty. He desegregated the schools in Alabama.
Others are also lining up to support Sessions, but there are those who still oppose him and accuse him 30 years later. Megan.
Trace, thank you. Joining me now with more, Sheriff David Clark of the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office, and Eric Guster, attorney and political commentator. Great to see you both. Eric, let me start with you. What's the problem with Senator Sessions? You heard the Trace report lay it out.
There are several problems with Senator Sessions. That's why it's very important that he is vetted. Now, I'm not calling him a racist, but a lot of people feel that he is. However, that is what vetting is all about. Excuse me, Megan?
Based on what?
Based on his history. When you have a person who worked with someone and called them boy, or who allegedly supported the KKK, which he denied, and that's the purpose of vetting. That's why it's very important that through this process, for him to become Attorney General, that he's properly vetted, that people who have testimony that could go to his character are brought forth and under sworn testimony and told exactly what they're saying and what he may have said. So, Megan, he would be the Attorney General, the person in charge of civil rights litigation for this nation. That's why he must be one that is fair for everyone, that is not has any racial bias or racial type of leaning, and he's very fair to everyone. That's why he would be everyone's AG.
Sheriff Clark, anything wrong with vetting?
Oh, no, nothing wrong with vetting, but let's be fair about this. Look, President-elect Donald Trump could not have found a more fair, qualified, committed to the rule of law and equal justice under law for everybody than Senator Sessions. I got to know Senator Sessions, worked with him on several issues on Capitol Hill. Look, I wasn't around in '86, but most of those allegations have been discredited up to now. And this man, this fine man, and I'm tired of people having their character assassinated by this almost like a sport that the left likes to play. When you can't beat somebody on the merits, just throw the R word up there and then watch them scream and squirm and try to get out of it. There's only three things in life that just a mere allegation of can be career destroying. It's to be accused of being a domestic abuser when it's not true, a child molester when it's not true, or a racist when it's not true. Look, Senator Sessions will be confirmed. It'll be tough, but there's nothing wrong with that. But I get tired of this R word being bandied about, like I said, as if it's some sort of sport.
Eric, why would he put the head of the KKK in jail? Why would he go after the head of the KKK and do all the things you heard outlined in that Trace Gallagher report if he were some racist?
Right, and not only that, he sought the death penalty.
She asked me the question, Sheriff.
For that Klan member who killed a young black boy, Michael McDonald. And also,
just because he helped
desegregate the schools. Senator Sessions helped desegregate the schools in Alabama. You know, he spent the last 30 years. Look, nobody's perfect. If he made some statements, he called somebody boy.
Don't worry, Eric,
Megan, I refer to myself as that.
Can I answer the question,
Megan? Where are you from? I tell him, I'm a Milwaukee boy. Okay, if some people are offended by that, I get that, but that's being hypersensitive.
Oh my God!
We need to knock this stuff off.
Just because he did his
job, and he needs to be vetted.
Just because he did
his job.
Vetted on his qualifications.
Just because he did his job.
The Attorney General
but let's give
of the
Eric
United
the
States
floor
of
now.
America.
It's his turn. Go ahead, Eric.
Just because he did his job does not mean he has a lack of. Just because he did his job that one time does not mean that he is not racist. That is why he needs to be vetted. I am not saying that he's a racist. However, he does have a history of not doing things that are fair to all people. That is why so many on the left want to make sure that he is properly vetted, that people are brought in to testify whether or not happened.
Don't just issue broad statements like that. What specifically has he done that's not fair to people?
He prosecuted several people who were registering voters, black voters, and claimed that they were doing things illegally, which is not true. He also, I'm from Alabama, so I know the history of Jeff Sessions, and I'm very aware of the things that he is accused of 30 years ago. And just because something happened 30 years ago does not mean that it's too far away that it's not relevant now, because this is the Attorney General's position where he is in charge of civil rights litigation, and we have such a broad lane of racial injustices happening that we need help.
Well, we'll find out, because judges and juries would have had their say in those cases, and if there were convictions, you know, then the civil process or the criminal process would have played out. We're going to look into all that as he goes forward with his confirmation hearings. Gentlemen, good to see you both. So we're also hearing suggestions now of political payback as reports surface that a top intel advisor to President Obama may be on the chopping block after he met with President-elect Trump. Plus, this fashion model thought it would be hilarious to mock our next First Lady, Melania Trump, and her accent and apparently her, well, intellect in front of millions of Americans last night. Actor Tim Allen is just ahead on how Hollywood is handling the President-elect and the First Lady coming in. So is there something that Hollywood doesn't get about America? Joining me now, 2017 People's Choice Award nominee, Tim Allen. Yes, there we go, yes. Who stars in ABC's, thank you, Jess, better late than never. It stars in ABC's Last Man Standing, which airs on Fridays at 8 p.m. Eastern. This is your chance. Show him the jacket. Look at this promo, ABC. Whatever you're paying him, it's not enough. ABC, 8 p.m. There we go. Got it.
That's what it's all about. I got to go.
So, Gigi Hadid mocking our next First Lady. Appropriate or not?
I don't think it's appropriate in that venue. But again, I'm not a spokesman for Hollywood. I'm a comedian.
Right.
So I get to tour around the country, and I do comedy, and I do a show that leans. We have a point of view. I think
your character is a conservative.
Well, a point of view, but it's written by liberals. We have a liberal staff. We have conservatives.
That goes without saying. That's redundant.
But we have a sense of humor about ourselves, and there's a point of view, and there's a place to do it. What I find odd in Hollywood is that they didn't like Trump because he was a bully. But if you had any kind of inkling that you were for Trump, you got bullied for doing that. Mm-hmm. And that's where it gets a little hypocritical to me, is that you can now bully people, and you're always on the defense with this. But mostly what I'm finding is there's no source material for comedians. Like, if I want to find a joke on the show, we go upriver to find the joke, and there's no, like, he was against homosexuals somehow. And I said, where did you...
Donald Trump?
Yeah, whoever said that. And he didn't wave the flag at the convention, the LGBT flag. Mm-hmm. And I said that was an unusual...
They've got a beef with Mike Pence on that, but Donald Trump, no.
But a close association to him, I don't see it. And so I said, well, I can't make a joke about it. I feel like we're playing that game I played when I was a kid at Telephone. Did you ever play that in high school?
Yeah, of course.
Where you say something at the beginning. And that's what's happening. It's only funny to me because I'm a comedian. I can do this. But it's very difficult in Hollywood to find any source material that would...
Well, how are you surviving there as somebody who's, you know, on TV as a conservative?
Well, I might not after tonight.
Outing himself as open to Donald Trump's ideas, because there are a lot of actors, I know many of them, who are part of the Hollywood conservative underground, and they do not reveal that they lean right at all.
I'm really an anarchist. That's how I look at it. As comedians, I don't like anybody telling me what to do, period.
I know, but people still object to that. If they find out you support Trump at all, it's like you smell bad, especially in Hollywood.
Believe me, I've had these. They're not even discussions. You get bullied into a position. I don't want to defend the guy. He said stupid stuff. To me, sometimes he acts like a new talent comedian. If you've ever been to a new talent show at a comedy, there's guys that have great material that have very, very bad comedy timing. And he's got terrible timing.
What do you mean?
Well, he says stuff that could be. George Lopez, and I hate to doubt George, he said a joke about, he was against the wall. Years ago on stage, it was real funny about, we build a wall, and forgive me, George, but the Mexicans will have to build it. And that was the joke. Donald says it, or expectant president?
President-elect Trump.
President-elect, expectant president. I guess that would be kind of weird, wouldn't it? If he actually was expectant. Well, who knows? But sometimes he doesn't say things. I give him the benefit of the doubt. A lot of comedians we watch, you go, God, if he just gapped that a little bit, it might have been funny. And he may, in fact, be a guy that wants to be funnier than he is. That doesn't matter. I look at a larger view. I don't like people telling me what to do. If you think this government works good the size it is, I'm one of these guys, just make it smaller. Mm-hmm. Who on that dais wanted to make it smaller? I'm not so sure that he does, because he has a long line of being a Democrat, but at least it was a shot at making things smaller. I don't know, fiscal realist rather.
What about all the infrastructure spending he wants to do, and he doesn't want to cut entitlements other than Obamacare?
I don't know. Then you get these little red flags go up. I'm not sure what exactly has happened. Certainly for a Democrat, you should be happy about this. He's not that. Some of those spending.
They could have wound up with Ted Cruz.
Don't start that.
When you're talking about social issues, I mean, they would have liked him a lot less.
Somebody said one comic, it looked like he had a milk allergy the way he talked. He had some. He's got to take some antibiotics or something. Didn't he seem like he had some kind of do one of these things?
Poor Ted. All right, I'm going to leave it at that. Tim Allen, and the show is actually very popular. Last Man Standing, up for People's Choice Awards. You've got our vote. Yeah, there we go.
Wait, let me give
Better late than never.
Can I give you a joke?
Yeah, great.
This is what I said. They're making LA's come up with safe space for people that voted for Trump. They're in that area. They want a safe space. They're calling it Texas. Thank you. I like it. Somebody got it.
Tim Allen, everybody. Thank you, sir. Joining us now with more, Karl Rove, Fox News political contributor and former senior advisor and assistant to President George W. Bush, and Mo Elleithee, a Fox News contributor and executive director of Georgetown's Institute of Politics and Public Service. Great to see you both, guys. So, Karl, your thoughts on the backlash we're seeing now from these Hollywood corners, entertainment corners?
Well, first of all, thanks for having Mo and Karl on after Tim Allen. That was really,
right?
Yeah.
He was your warm-up
I'm with
act.
you, Karl. I'm with you.
Yeah. Look, I think it's understandable. Hollywood has been tone deaf in this election. Their anger at the election outcome has been heated, and it's led them to do stupid things. Look, the First Lady ought to be off limits, and maybe it took Miss Hadid a week in order to prepare that. But if that's the best she could do after a week, I'd recommend she find another thing other than trying to be a comedian. Maybe she ought to just stick to fashion.
Weren't we told, Mo, by the Democrats for the past 8 years that the First Lady is off limits?
Yeah, look, I didn't find that joke very tasteful. But let me say this: Karl's right that people are angry. There's been a lot of anger now for quite some time on both sides. And I think some of the stuff that we saw last night wasn't appropriate, just as I think a lot of the stuff that we saw being directed towards President Obama and Secretary Clinton during the campaign at Trump rallies was not appropriate. Both sides need to just calm down and just need to cool off for a little bit.
Well, meanwhile, what do you make of what happened to Vice President-elect Mike Pence at Hamilton over the weekend, where the actor who plays Aaron Burr, Brandon Victor Dixon, had a message for Mike Pence that Mike Pence actually took like a real gentleman and took the high road in response to it. But there's been a lot of backlash, Karl, on whether this actor was in any position to lecture the vice president-elect while he was there observing the show.
Yeah, look, with a change of a few words, it could have been appropriate. Rather than saying we're alarmed and anxious that you're not going to defend our inalienable rights, a reference to the Declaration's pledge of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, if he had simply said, look, we hope for your administration's success in upholding our inalienable rights. And rather than saying, we hope that coming here tonight inspired you to uphold our American values and to work on all our behalf, what if he'd said, we hope that you're inspired by what you heard tonight as you work on behalf of all Americans in our common country. The intimation right from the get-go was, you're against us, you're not going to even uphold our fundamental constitutional rights, and we're hoping that you were smart enough to finally figure it out during this show on Broadway.
What he said is,
to do the right thing.
We are the diverse America who are alarmed and anxious that your new administration will not protect us, our planet, our children, our parents, or defend us, or uphold our inalienable rights, and goes on from there. But Mo, the Hamilton actor who lectured our vice president-elect has called women hoes on Twitter. There was a woman who tweeted out, remember when NFL players would just play the game, bang, mad hoes, and collect their checks? Guess that's not enough anymore. And he responded saying, the problem is hoes aren't what they used to be. If Ho Game would step up, cats wouldn't get distracted. So there's already questions being raised about whether this particular actor was in the best position to lecture Vice President-elect Mike Pence on unity.
Yeah, and I hadn't seen those tweets, but let me say this just about the broad issue of what happened at Hamilton. You know, the same people that are, and I think Karl made some valid points there, but there is an inalienable right to free speech, and he had a platform and he used it. I thought the way he did it, I think the way the Hamilton cast did it, was far more respectful than what we saw last night. And I thought Mike Pence's response was exactly right.
Very dignified.
The point is, there are a lot of people out there who feel anxious, who feel afraid. And I think Donald Trump's tweet storm attacking Hamilton didn't do anything to alleviate that. Rather than go on the attack, but I think what he could have done was simply say, you know what, people of Hamilton, I will work every day to make sure that I allay that concern and prove to you that I will work for everyone.
Right,
that would have been far better.
Because President-elect Trump is supposed to be against political correctness and against safe spaces, and he believes in the right to offend, and that this goes with that. But let me ask you this, Mo: were you equally? Did you also defend the free speech rights of Dr. Ben Carson when he stood up at the National Prayer Breakfast and called out President Barack Obama, to his face? Because we saw a lot on the left in that situation, outraged that he spoke truth to power in a setting that wasn't supposed to be political. But now when the actor from Hamilton does it, you'd think the guy is in line for a Nobel Peace Prize. They love it when somebody does it to a Republican. They didn't really love it when Ben Carson did it to the sitting president.
Yeah, my problem with what Ben Carson said has always been the substance of what he said. We just have a fundamental disagreement on the policy. And for people to speak up, that's one thing. Do it respectfully.
Ben Carson
and make
was
your
respectful.
Point.
He was respectful, but he got savaged. I'll give it to Carl. He got savaged by many on the left for having the nerve to say things like the debt is too big and we need to work on Obamacare right in front of the president in a setting they said that was inappropriate and not meant for political speeches, just like Hamilton.
Yeah. Well, look, he didn't say one thing. He didn't question President Obama's fundamental commitment to the Declaration of Independence and the promise of the Constitution, which is exactly what Mr. Dixon did on Saturday night by saying, we're alarmed and anxious. You will not even uphold our inalienable rights. So, yeah, there was a difference. You're right. The left trashed Ben Carson.
But the right has been saying that. The right has been saying that about Barack Obama for years. I mean, let's be fair here.
Well, and the right also defended Ben Carson, and now they're savaging the Hamilton actor. So there's hypocrisy on both sides. By the way, I challenge you viewers at home to say the word inalienable. Say it fast. Inalienable. Inalienable. It's not easy.
3 times fast.
Right, exactly.
Great to see you both. Growing outrage tonight after the family of a fallen American hero is booed by first-class passengers on a flight out of California. Now this father in mourning is speaking out. Plus, one day after the head of the NSA meets with President-elect Trump, we hear suggestions he could soon be booted from his current role in the Obama administration. Former CIA Director James Woolsey and Secretary of Defense Advisor Mark Jacobson are next. Developing tonight, a report from the Washington Post suggests that President Obama is being advised to remove Admiral Mike Rogers from his post as head of the NSA, or National Security Agency. That report comes after a high-profile meeting between Admiral Rogers and President-elect Donald Trump, and it has some questioning whether this is a case of political payback. James Woolsey is the former director of the Central Intelligence Agency, and Dr. Mark Jacobson is the former senior advisor to the Secretary of Defense. Great to see you both. So,
good to be with you.
How is this a case of payback when the meeting he had with Donald Trump just happened, and the recommendation to boot him apparently happened a month prior to that? Prior to that, Director Woolsey?
I don't know. I don't understand that rationale either. I think that what's really going on here, you had the old administration going out January 20th, in which the Secretary of Defense and the head of the overall intelligence, chairman of the board, Jim Clapper, essentially, have been very critical of Admiral Rogers, and then people, including members of Congress, who will be here after January 20th, some have been quite supportive. And this is all taking place in the context of the huge hacks into the National Security Agency, supposedly one of our most secure institutions, maybe most secure. One was Snowden, but then more recently have been 2 more.
Including on his watch. That's the problem.
Yeah, and a lot of people are really bothered by this. I mean, Office of Personnel Management let me know that my background files had been hacked, and I tried in filling out the form to replace them. A friend of mine on the same panel I was on, this is an advisory panel for the Defense Department, a friend of mine had to fill out 187 pages. And whatever the answer is to having these losses that we've had in the hacks, it's not 187 pages to fill out your form.
Dr. Jacobson, do you see this guy as a controversial figure for Trump's administration?
Well, I think Jim's right in the sense that there are a lot of bad things that happened under Rogers' watch. He was expected to really clamp down on the security situation in the post-Snowden era. But what does concern me, though, is that Rogers thought something was slightly wrong in the sense that he decided to take personal leave to go see President Trump. As I think many people know, Rogers has a long relationship with Mike Flynn, the incoming national security advisor who's close with Trump. And I think it sets really the wrong tone.
Wasn't it like a day? I mean, who cares?
Well, again, I think that this happened, at least the reasons for the recommendation that Rogers be removed happened long before. But there's something amiss here. I think you're seeing the Trump team consciously going after generals and admirals who've had disagreements with the Obama administration.
Yeah, they're saying that prior to this, he was put on notice by his two bosses, Clapper and Carter, Ash Carter and Jim Clapper, that he needed to improve his leadership style. He had been aloof. He had been frequently absent. He doesn't listen to staff input. Those are the allegations against him. So we'll decide whether President-elect Donald Trump thinks he's appropriate to head up the NSA. Guys, thank you both so much for being here. Appreciate it both. Still ahead, the story behind why some airline passengers decided to boo the Gold Star family who just lost their son in Afghanistan. Developing tonight, growing outrage over reports that a Gold Star family on their way to meet their son's remains was booed by some first-class passengers. Trace Gallagher live in our West Coast Bureau with the details. Trace?
Megan Stewart Perry, his wife and daughter, were flying to Dover Air Force Base in Delaware to accept their son's remains. The initial flight went from Sacramento to Philly with a stop in Phoenix. But for mechanical reasons, the flight was 45 minutes late to Phoenix, and the Stewarts were in danger of missing their connection. So the captain asked passengers to remain seated so that, quote, a special military family could leave the plane first. That's when the Perry family says passengers in first class started booing and saying, I paid first class for this? Watch.
To hear the reaction of the flight being delayed because of a Gold Star family and the first class cabin booing that was really upsetting, and it made us cry some more.
Mr. Perry himself, a Marine Corps vet, says some passengers and coach knew they were Gold Star because they offered condolences, but he can't say for sure if the first class passengers were aware, which of course doesn't make it any less egregious. The airline says, quote, American was honored to have this family on board. We will always make every possible effort to ensure a smooth journey in such difficult circumstances. Sergeant John Perry was killed along with 3 other Americans during a suicide attack inside the Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan. Sergeant Perry was reportedly able to stop the bomber before he blew up those watching a 5K race, which could have killed dozens. Sergeant Perry was a hero. His family did not get heroic treatment. Megan.
Trace, thank you. And our condolences to them. Wow. We'll be right back. And don't forget to pick up your copy of my new book, Settle for More. It's already a bestseller, described by Booklist as a winning memoir. Entertainment Weekly calls it a primer on the value of hard work, self-esteem, and perseverance. Hope you like it. Settle for More. See you tomorrow.